Still making the headlines. Naira, right now, headlines at parallel market rates hit new low against the US dollar and other top currencies. Let's talk to Femi Onokere, now MD, Nose Ananke Solutions Limited, joining us via Zoom. Great to have you on the program. Good morning.
Good morning. It's great to be with you this morning.
Yeah, so we see the Forex market here getting a lot of attention right now. Is this really about the Naira redesign or just speculation?
One of the things that we need to understand as a country, as a people, is that what are the factors that affect the value of a currency? We have the supply and demand factors. We have sentiments and market psychology, and we also have technical factors. In the case of the Naira, right, there is a supply and demand edge. But normally supply and demand is supposed to be driven by productivity. And unfortunately, most of the demand we have is regarding hedging of funds and storing of value, not to produce anything or to actually have trade with the demand, but just to store some value, in the USD. And sentiments and market psychology is further driving all this, which means that most of what we have in terms of the current exchange rate is driven by speculation. If we were to ask what the quantum of demand of the USD is used for productive venture for actual trade, you'll be shocked that it's quite minimal, and that really affects the ability of the Naira to gain any sustainable value or retain any strong presence against the USD. It must be noted that redesigning the currency, number one, it's a normal thing. It's something that is done in different phases, different times, across different countries. So it's not an issue. The reason this one is coming up as such an issue now is that we actually need to redesign it. It's a need for us, not just a norm for us. It's a need for us because the excess liquidity is driving inflation beyond manageable levels. And whatever the CBN does in terms of increasing interest rate, or is not going to stem, the free fall, that we are experiencing. And if the CBN is not able to mop up available liquidity, then we are going to have, continuously spiraling, inflation. So the redesigning is being used as an opportunity by many to fuel speculation and further devalue, the Naira. One of the questions I like to ask people is, we do our transactions in Naira. We do our things, we buy stuff in the market in the Naira. So why is your currency of transaction, currency of trade, why is it different from your currency of value? Because the actual value you're getting from the goods and services, right, you pay for it in Naira. But then after you have done your transaction in Naira and receive that value, you take that money, then convert it to the USD, which means that you've dollarized the economy, and that's something that we need to take a strong look at and reduce our propensity to depend on the USD.
Right, and we've seen other countries like Ghana and Egypt. They're struggling with currency devaluation also. Would you say the dollar is the problem here?
In my estimation, I think you asked a very, very important question for the whole world to consider. The dollar is the problem, and I'll give you a couple of reasons along the line of thought. Number one, what gives value to the dollar? The dollar's premium backing is the U.S. government, faith in the U.S. government's ability to redeem. So basically what we have is that we have a currency that's a sovereign currency, to a country, also having the dual role of being a global currency. Now, this means that the U.S. has an unfair advantage. The dollar has an unfair advantage because each country within its sovereignty will design policies that would help its own economy before it talks about helping the rest of the world. But if everyone else's transaction and trade is leveraged off the USD, then everybody is at exposure. If they make good decisions in the US, it affects everybody. If they make bad decisions, it affects everybody. So the US Fed, right, raised interest rates and from like 3.75 to 4%, and strengthened the dollar. It is not a secret and no surprise that across board globally the dollar became so strong compared to every other currency, including the euro and all the other major currencies of trade. So the dollar we must face as as the albatross in the room, that the dependence on the USD, right, and the sovereignty that the US has over the USD, there are issues that we need to balance out, especially for consuming economies in terms of trade and transactions. That by the side, the Egyptian case that you referenced, Egypt decided in March 2022 to remove the fixed rate policy, which is similar to what we have here in Nigeria. And based on that, they had a 20 to 25% devaluation of their currency. Ghana's situation is a bit different because Ghana's free fall is more driven by, poor utility resonance from their debt profile. Nigeria has a curious case in the terms that our fixed rate and our black market rate, the parallel market rate, the black parallel market rate is like 100%, the fixed rate, which is really abysmal. It does not reflect reality in terms of the true value of the naira, with respect to the dollar, because you ask yourself the question, what is the basis? Right, what's driving the demand if we are not a dollar, economy, and we're not leveraged to the yield? All
right, but would you say it's time to depeg, from the dollar? And if a country actually takes this step, what could actually, what are the effects of actually depegging at this point?
Depegging from the USD is going to be difficult because, Bretton Woods, IMF, the rest of them, they've closed all of us up in this circle, and there's very, little wiggle room for, the rest of the world. But what we can do is we can have a phased management in terms of seizing control as a sovereign nation, right, over our own currency, over our transactions, over our destiny, and the West will fight back, as we have seen that they are fighting back in the instance of the BRICS trying to set up a currency of exchange, right? And the current war going on with Russia and Ukraine and all the roadblocks and economic stumble blocks that they put in, to sustain and protect their own positions. What we can do is, first, we need to reduce our dependence, right, in terms of debt and aid on on the US, on the West, such that when they want to give you economic sanctions, right, they also have a feedback that you have some local control. We also need to build our local productivity. Part of our issue as a country is that we have acquired the taste for foreign things, and even when we produce things in Nigeria and that are of good quality, they can be used, we often interpret them in terms of dollar references, in terms of Western references. So mentally, psychologically, just like I said about sentiments and market psychology, influencing value, we are already devaluing, our position. So we need to create instances where productivity is driven by the naira. Like I said, you go to the market, you don't buy your stuff in dollars. You don't buy tomatoes in dollars. You don't buy your bread in dollars. So why are we so fixated on the dollar? Why do we peg? If we're trading in the dollar, then it would make sense that we'll monitor it. We'll be concerned about what the US, Fed Reserve is doing. But if we are trading in naira, then demand for the naira, the value of the naira, which is one of the things that we hope that the redesigning of the currency would achieve, can actually be stimulated.
So much ado about the dollar, but some have recommended here, floating the exchange rate, for the naira, and we see what's happening, with Egypt. They also, told that path, but to actually float or to run a successful, fixed rate system, you need a strong reserve. So how do we make this happen?
Floating is a very, very dicey thing to pursue at this point in the global economy, in our local economy. Floating, if we're complaining right now about the exchange rate as it is, that, the dollar is moving to 1,000 to the naira, I can assure you that it's going to be 2-3 times more than that if we decide to float. Most people like to focus on the demand supply end, and they say, okay, look, let there be free availability of USD. And then the question is, what brings in the inflow of USD? You must back it up with some local productivity. It's value exchange. So what is the value exchange? What value are we bringing to the table? We have very low productivity. We have legacy infrastructure, deficits across board. We have policies that need to be retweaked and rejigged. we are not in a state to assume that, we have the ability for a free float. It's going to be a lot more difficult if we do a float at this point, than at any other time. And we would, in fact, have more issues than Egypt experienced when they did their own floating, situation. In my opinion, I feel that we can have a structured play. It's going to be difficult, but in a structured play, we have what the CBN was trying to do before, which is a managed float before some global economic issues came up. You would recall that as of 2019, the economy was moving up. We had serious, strong projections from IMF and the rest of the other economic observers until COVID-19 came and, really shuttled all plans. And then starting, this year again, we also had the same issues. We're trying to build up 2021, the last quarters of the year. The economy was pushing, and then we had the Russia-Ukraine war. We had our revenue challenges in terms of oil theft and low receipts on oil, sales. So what we need is to increase local productivity and try to plug, the infra deficits we have here.
Right. So much to do now, and hopefully, we don't get more pressure, going into December. Thank you so much, Femi Onokorede, the MD, Sananke Solutions Limited. It was great having your perspective.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. So after the break, we'll look at economic concerns weighing on business leaders ahead of the 2023 general elections. That's our next conversation. Just stay with us.